I hope everybody can hear me from here. Well, I want to thank Professor Mahavala and all the very distinguished people who are here. I know Professor Mahavala for quite some time. He was a distinguished professor at Kanpur and Chennai and so many different places. Again, we want to thank you for coming here. And again, Dr. Ramrao, thank you for your kind words. So I'm going to be talking on a very important topic that we're all sort of, worried about, the security on internet. Okay, so there is a lot of ramification in terms of the operation of internet, because internet is the calculus of this century, because through internet we can continuously communicate to anybody, anywhere in the world, so there is no restriction on that. So that has become a very fundamental structure for the society right now. So the cyber security for the next maybe 10 years. So I'm going to sort of tell you a lot of good things and also some bad things that's going on pretty much right now all around the world. So I may be focusing mostly from the United States context point of view because that's where I've collected a lot of data. And we've been very fortunate that we have been awarded a very major research grant. It's going to be announced anytime soon from U.S.A Research Office, something close to $600,000. And that's very important, because, in the United States, funding is very critical for any type of work we do. So the talk, essentially I'm going to be sort of giving a little bit of a background and what is the current landscape, some statistics to show the importance of this problem. Then there is war, crime, terror, and nuisance about the cyber security. Then homeland security of the front World War, what can happen. And then there are some emerging futures that we can think about it. We call it as cyber physical systems. Then some of our research, what we are doing, and then talk about some conclusion on the part of it. So let's see what exactly the interesting aspect of it right now. I'm sort of quoting many of the articles. So the Washington Post, so this is a recent data just before I left the United States. So there has been an attack on the U.S. Office of Personnel Management. This is the largest breach in federal employee data. So the Chinese hackers were able to get a lot of important data. So that means, these are very personal data, some classified information. So that means 4 million records of federal data have been compromised right now. Then, so this was only discovered recently. Although this was hacked in April, nobody knew about it. Like when you are sort of operating on your credit card, make sure that it gives you the credit card back, because that information can be known to anybody around the world. So there is a private security firms, Anthem healthcare attack. So remember that there are a lot of medical information that we have, that a lot of privacy involved in that. So that also has been compromised. And then that the phishing has become very important on many of the US target applications. Now, some more statistics, I don't know whether you can see this properly or not. So the healthcare insurance, 80 million records have been compromised. In the United States, there are a lot of data which are very important about patients, and those have been hacked. Sony Pictures, and I think you must have heard recently, they had lots of important information, and that has been sort of wiped out, and they've been able to get into their data centers, in terms of the salary list, the film budgets, the entire social numbers, everything has been hacked. Staples. Staples is another commercial company in terms of the stationeries. So 1.16 million credit cards in the context of staples are being compromised. Then you must have heard of a Home Depot, another important, lumber company, home-related companies. Again, 56 million payment cards were compromised. Then, of course, the most important thing of all is the Chase Bank. The Chase Bank is a very important bank in the United States, and it has been sort of attacked on that. So there are other news. In terms of the statistics, I'm trying to sort of justify how the problem has been compromised, especially in the cybersecurity. Okay? So, Pentagon. Pentagon has information, and you know that from the Wikipedia links, there's always a constant amount of information the United States is gathering. There's always a debate on that, whether you should gather or not. But this is very important by looking at these kind of statistics, because there are always terrorists who are plotting based on these kind of data. So you can look at it, $14 billion in the United States for cybersecurity has been spent in terms of preventing harm. So there is a lot of emphasis, even for example, $5.5 billion is just in the U.S. defense budget alone. So that means, so what is that I'm trying to justify here is, things have become really very hectic in the context of having a large amount of these personal data that have been hacked continuously, and there are a lot of good evidences that have been hacked from China. So all that statistics I gave you, and I will also give you some more statistics in the context of, see, there is a very famous David Glotner. He writes a lot of books on cybersecurity. He says that it is difficult to maintain an effective cybersecurity program without a high-level engagement, because we must understand the kind of vulnerabilities we have in all of these attacks. So that's one of the things that we need to know. Then, cybersecurity is an important risk now in the United States, because the Homeland Security has seen over and over again the data pertaining to many of these things have been very much compromised. So, if you look on some of these specific examples of so many pictures, like attack by North Korea, okay? And so there is also a possible U.S. retaliation on many of these things, because North Korea can attack also nuclear plants, and then they can also sort of attack many of these things, and it could be very dangerous. And so these are all some of the things that can happen in terms of the cybersecurity. So the next question that we need to ask ourselves is this an act of war or just another incident of hacking? Maybe 3 or 4 years back, these things we thought, well, this is just maybe an isolated case and this may not happen over and over again. But if you look at some of the statistics only that we know that are given, so this has become fairly regular routine stuff. Some more statistics. So if you look at the global cyber attacks, it has rose to 48% in 2014. So you can very well imagine that security costs something at an average of $2.7 million each year for a business company. An average reported loss up to 34%. Number of organizations reporting losses greater than $20 million. So the fastest growing threat right now that we have is what we call as the cyber threat. So that is the most important thing that we need to be aware of that, because, so what is that we can do? Because United States depends pretty much, and I think all over the world, we depend on oil, gas, aerospace, defense and technology, and so these incidents attributed to computers into 64%. So you can very well imagine the statistics that we have. So now, these are what we call as cyber criminals. These people are switching their focus to medium size. So this has become a very common practice. So despite all of this increasing frequency and severe cyber security attacks, the budget has not still grown in the United States because I think it's sort of growing at an average of 4%. So this will certainly give us an idea like if we are training students, researchers for the next generation, they need to be aware of cyber security threats because so now in that context, every university has started a program, a master's and undergraduate program on cyber security because that's going to be the state of the threat at least in the next 10 years. So how can we prevent these attacks? How can we train our students? How can we think in a direction that those threats are not possible? So here is some sort of a histogram. So if you look at it, all the red thing that you see is the cybercrime and these are hackathons. So in our university we have started a program called Hackathon Program. So what does it do? So we train our students and tell them to hack a system, where we have a network of about 100 terminals, tell us different ways of hacking the system, and then we have another group of students where they are trying to prevent those kind of hacking on the terminal. So those kind of hackathons are very important, and I'm sure there are some, in Institute of Science, they may already have started. But this is something very, very critical in years to come. So what is the motivations behind all of these attacks? So the cybercrime is essentially, is to sort of keep somebody progressing. And especially some of these communist countries like, North Korea, China. Well, China is becoming slowly socialistic right now, but still, they spend a lot of money to make sure that how they can attack the Pentagon and many of these other agencies. So you can see some of the statistics here. So the cyber crime is in red, so it's almost 62%. Then there are hackathons, then cyber espionage. So there are so many of those things are pretty much going on. So if you have to sort of think, what is the top 5 most attacked countries in terms of the cyber security? So Russia is number 1, number 2 is Germany, number 3 is United States, number 4 is India, and number 5 is France. So this is an important problem, especially for countries which they are trying to sort of move up in the ladder, So these are the attacks. So what is cyber security? So now let's go and define what we mean by a cyber security. So cyber security essentially refers to protecting our computer centers, networks and information systems from disruption, or how do you prevent unauthorized access to our system? And that's what is happening, in most of the cases whenever they attack, our system. Because if they are attacking the internet, as I said, because somebody has an unauthorized access to your system, that means he knows his password, he can guess. So, and then he's able to sort of disclose all the information that we have, and he can create a destruction. So, the basic concept of our objectives of cyber security is to ensure the confidentiality. That's the most important thing anywhere. Like if I have some important information on my system, I don't want anybody to know it, so that confidentiality is very important. Then the integrity of the data is also important, and the availability of data. So whether we are talking about health-related data, or war-related data, or the financial data, it does not matter, because all of those things, or the 3 components, are very, very important. So what is confidentiality? As I said, information is only accessible to people who have really access to the system. That means, although, for example, I'm the director of a program, I don't have an access to my faculty's, name or information, because that's very confidential, that whatever we can think. Now, integrity is, data in question has not been tampered accidentally or maliciously. So the integrity of the data is very, very critical for many of these cybersecurity systems. Now, the availability of information. That's also important because whenever we sort of give this information, there are three things that we need to consider is what is the reliability of my information that I am sending. The next thing is who can access my information and what is the immediate need of that information on that. So, what is an information security incident? I mean, just to give you an idea, unauthorized access is the most important thing that we need to worry about it, or violation of an explicit or implicit usage policy, because there are some guidelines and policies that we have to use the system. Then, so that means we need an agent and an action. So an information asset does not require MOT. So that's the whole idea behind this information security incident. So this is a very delicate balancing act. So, because there are a lot of people, like especially when there is an election, people will be sort of leading through, tweaking or any of the other type of devices or information that is available. So if, for example, if I have an enterprise here, what kind of regulation I have, the availability, and then the investigative readiness. So then we also have to have protection of your data that you have. Then you need to have innovation in the data. See, one of the things that we need to be sort of careful is we are not sort of advocating, negative innovation or negative creativity in this process. So we need a lot of creative ways to store data. We need creative ways to access the data. So those are all the kinds of things we need to be sort of balancing in this. So the question that comes back again is, are cyber attacks an act of war, or is this a crime, or is this a terror, or is this a nuisance? Now, when you say an act of war, we are essentially talking about an act of aggression by a country against another country with which is normally at peace. Okay? So does this definition of cybersecurity falls into this? Now, crime. So is this an act of crime? So when we talk about a crime, so we essentially define a crime that someone is breaking the law. We have certain laws and somebody is breaking it, and that is sort of unwanted for the society. Then crime agent against a person, or maybe crime against a property, all of these things can be done through the cyber system. Now, crimes war is something new. We are talking about right now, in this decade, what we call as information war. That's the most important thing is, which is completely different from the traditional conventional war that we've been used to. So this is essentially, we can debilitate an entire United States Air Force by sending worms or black holes through the system and make the entire system essentially gone, they're not able to work on that. So now, in our university and a few other universities, through a program called DARPA, we have a program that can control your driving. So let's assume that you are starting driving from point A to point B. Then I can control your driving, and I can, make you not to drive in the direction where you want to go. That's very dangerous. I mean, if people know where I am going and what I am trying to do, then essentially my whole function is sort of, is going in a different direction. So this is what we call as an information war. And this kind of information war is very, very critical. How do you sort of understand this? But because you need to understand, as I said, I gave you an example, I can write a computer program to control your navigation. That's a very dangerous thing what I'm telling you today. Because, see, if you look at, for example, a recent 2015 car, it's pretty automated. It has a lot of sensors, and it is completely coordinated by, I would say, a small mini computer. So if I know some of the details of some of these sensing devices, I can really control, because I can control the GPS in your car by writing a program. So this is again, what we are talking is a multi-dimensional interconnected network, whether it is on the ground or in the air or underwater, as well as terminals, modems. So anywhere that you are talking, the spectrum of data that you have can all be controlled. For example, remember that when there is a very important flight path, which is, let's say, going from Bombay to London, all of these things are completely computerized. It's a fly-by control plane. So if I can have access to some of the important coding information, I can have your plane completely running in space until you ran out of gas. So this is the danger, what we are talking on, controlling the instrumentation panel on the plane. So these are some examples. People are sort of looking at it. So now what is a cyber war? So if you look at the history of military, they argue the warfare has shifted to a fourth generation of warfare. Just like first generation, third, second. So now technology not only enables asymmetry in power, but it can be used to overcome. That's the most important thing. Undermining the enemy within. So now this information age we have, so especially for many of these military operations, there is information revolution, information translation, information, translation into ideas are very, very critical, and it will certainly have an impact to the civil society. Now, so as I said, this kind of cybersecurity programs have been started all over United States and all over, many universities. The reason is we need to be sort of training our next generation of researchers in the context of how they can understand the implications of some of these information war or information revolution that is pretty much taking place. That means we need to train students who have entrepreneurial kind of abilities. You give an idea, then they should be able to translate that into technology. So those are the kinds of things which are very, very important. Now, civil, military, cyber warfare intersection. So there is this national information infrastructure has been established in the United States. So this is an information infrastructure consists of information systems and network where the entire nation depends on this function. In case of a cyber warfare, confrontation takes place only with the state-of-the-state conflict. That's the kind of thing. But states and non-state actors, so there are many different permutations and combinations this kind of conflict can take place. Do you understand what, we are in a very different world now. You may not realize it. When I go to conferences from one place to the other, both the United States Army, Navy, the whole function here is to make sure to see how important, the trajectory and understanding of this information war that goes on from one place to other. So this is the future of warfare. This is serious. Because what will be the warrior guardian of the future who looks like this? So this is the cyber security. So this is where, if you look at it, this sort of dates back here, but this is what the new generation of things that takes place. So what is that we are interested in? So we have to sort of minimize what we call the cyber conflict spectrum. There may be a lot of information that is being taking place, exchanges from the airspace to the ground space, as well as on other cyberspace. So we call all of these as cyberspace, which involves air, space, underwater. So there is a lot of conflict among different countries. I don't know how many of you have read the newspaper. I saw that there are naval submarines from China is presently being located in Pakistan harbors. So, I mean, I saw that some write-up on that. So that means India is worried about what is these Chinese people, especially the submarines, doing in Pakistan. So this is a kind of an example that, things can happen. So World War Z versus World War C, this is the way it looks in years to come. And so the front line of the War C is the cyber war. So that is what this is going to happen in years to come. So the most likely cyber attacks that can take place is unpatched software, phishing attacks, traveling words on the internet, advanced persistent threats. So most likely I would say the attacks of ignorance, the insider threat. That can also happen. I mean, if you look at some of these Wall Street transactions, what has been going on, that's all through this cyber threat. So the new future of cyber warfare, is social, it's economic and political. So that means the whole theme now is attack now for the future. Case in point, example, China. They are looking both from the social point of view as well as the economic and also to gain political connection. So what are the warfare functions? Some of you have heard of some of these SCADA attacks, flame, worms, kilobytes. So all of these things can certainly play an important role. Okay, so cyber warfare at this point, what we call as a turning point in our society. So a new generation of cyber defenders also. So if you look at it, there are too many threats. If you look at it, there are 62%, I've already discussed about this. Enterprises are under siege from rising volume of cyber attacks. So there are too few professionals to sort of minimize these kind of threats. So that's why it's very, very important. We need to train our researchers to understand what is a cyber crime and how we can prevent it. So here is some more examples of most common cyber security investments the people at the university as well as at other places people are doing. So every company nowadays wants to have people who have some experts on cyber security. What everyone needs to know about data defense, defend your data. So data is very important because you must defend the data. So defending your data, step one, to understand the sense of reality about what you can do in cybersecurity. Step two, develop a collaboration within your sector. Step three, back to basics. And step four, good contingency plan. So this is very important because my system has been hacked many times. So I wrote a book last year on mathematical theories of sensor networks. My name with my students. And I saw on the web page the next day, they replaced all the author names with somebody else on the web page. So then I had to call the Amazon and find out more about it. But again, these are the kinds of things, that you have to sort of defend on your data. Defending your data, you have to do a divide and control, and conquer, have a cybersecurity policy, employ policies for technology, and passwords are very, very important. Don't take it very lightly because the passwords can really hurt the entire system. So you must use a password that's only known to you and nobody else in the world. So the bottom line is defending your data both in the business, universities, and every different place. So the emerging future of cyber physical systems. So a cyber physical system is again a component of computational elements plus controlling physical entities. Here is an example. Yesterday there was a homeless person here. I told you automation can replace anything. So here is a simple example of what can happen in many of these things. So emerging challenges, what are the biggest cybersecurity concerns? How do we secure our systems? What tools and software engineering things can be done? So I think I'll stop at this point and summarize it basically. So these kind of attacks are very, very important. And so the idea of confidentiality, the integrity of the data, And all of these things can be compromised without defending and coming up with, essentially the software engineering tools that you can think of to prevent it. And this attack is something very, very critical in years to come. So the most interesting thing is, again, even at National College, we need to be introducing some new courses so that our students are well trained for the next generation to minimize this, because we are only talking about a new generation of information war, which is going to become eminent as we start talking and doing everything through the internet, and that becomes a critical bottleneck. So this is the landscape that will happen, or is likely to happen, or it is currently happening, and so we must have a very critical idea and functionality to understand the basic ideas of what is cybersecurity. Now, this is also a very beautiful area. Cybersecurity essentially, bridges computer science, electrical engineering, physics, and mathematics. So there is a lot of nice, beautiful security-related mathematics paper we have written. It is all on the web page. So all that I've given you is a talk in a very much in general to make you aware of the importance of the cybersecurity, but there is a fundamental theory and science behind all of those things what we are talking. And like for example, when we talk about internet, you're really talking about the communication, and then the devices that you are doing, and the kind of search engines that you use for many of these applications. Everything plays a very, very significant role. So this is at large a very generic structure of the problems of cybersecurity currently we are going through, and for the next generation, maybe for 5 to 10 years. So this is what we call as the information war of exchange. So we need to be sort of training and making students to think, coming up with some new devices and software tools to minimize. We can't control it completely because there are a large amount of people everywhere, and especially China has spent enormous amount of money. All that their job is to see how they can attack, the world which is started moving. And so India is started moving in a very rapidly in many of these directions. So although there may be a lot of nice, interesting, political solutions, they are looking at it, but still, this is a war that we need to take it seriously. Thank you very much.
General vote of thanks is secretary Kodoko, but you are here I want to give you one more information. No? We got 4 national colleges, one in Basuri campus, one in Iyengar, one in Bagapalli, one in Gauribindu. Adellonu Sresti, one university model, and that in the birthplace of Dr. H. Narasimha. So Yella Kappa yes, Kastan. I guess to on this deposit to develop. Money is not a problem now, we can find money somewhere. In a modern day, money is not a problem. But the problem is, Bangalore minimum of 25 acres of land. Yes, the Bangalore 50 acres of land. That's why I am shifting to that place. I go government in the document, that's the part. But I think that do you have a research center? Why can't I Bangalore University Research Center permission get there? More to the university hang of course, Upper Bandavan, you phone for them. That's Sitharama. Or no, guest to national college there, immediately, of course, they have full powers to put it. He is in a high position also. Immediately, one research center, Kala University grant. That's a understanding. Technically, university try ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ 30 ವರ್ಷ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಟೆಕ್ನಿಕಲ್ ಕೊಡಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ 5 ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಾ UGC ಸ್ಕೇಲ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ 5 ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ UGC ಸ್ಕೇಲ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರು ಕೂಡ ಆಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ತಾರೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಏನು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಉಂಟಾಗೋದ್ರೆ ಇವ್ರು ಯಾವ್ದು ಎಷ್ಟು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಓದ್ಬೇಕಾರೆ ಟೇಕ್ಸ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಹಾಫ್ ಅನ್ ಅವರ್ ಅಂತ. ಬಟ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಲ್ಲದೆ ಅವರೇ ಇನ್ನೂ ಸಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ಸ್ನೇ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ದಿನೇಶ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಅವರು ರೆಡಿ ಟು ಬಿಕಮ್ ಗೈಡ್ಸ್. 31 ಜನ ಟೀಚರ್ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಡಿಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಇದೆ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಾಗಿ. ಯಾಕೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಇನ್ಸಿಡೆಂಟ್ ಇರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ದೇರ್ಸ್ ನೋ ಆಲ್ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ನೋ ಥಿಯರಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಬ್ಯಾರಿಯರ್. If they are interested, they can have continuous contact with them through either FaceTime or through Skype or ಸಿಗ್ತಾರೆ. ಇವಾಗ ಯಾರು ನನಗೆ ಬಂದು ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ ಸಿಗ್ಲಾ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿಲ್ಲ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಾಗಿ. ಇದನ್ನ ನನಗೆ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ತಿಳಿಸ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತಾರೆ. ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್ ವೆರಿ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಹಿಮ್, ಗ್ರೇಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಹಿಮ್ ಗ್ರಾಂಟೆಡ್ ಎ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಸೆಂಟರ್, ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಸೆಂಟರ್ ಐ ಬಾಳ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ. ಇದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ನಾಳೆ ದಿನ ಲೆಕ್ಚರು ಅದು ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸಿ ವಿ ಮೋಹನ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ವೆರಿ ಗುಡ್ ಡೆಂಟಿಸ್ಟ್ ಇನ್ ಬ್ಯಾಂಗ್ಳೂರ್. ನಾಟ್ ಆರ್ಡಿನರಿ ಇಂಪ್ಲಾಂಟೇಷನ್ ಅದಕ್ಕೆಲ್ಲ ಅವ್ರದೇ ಲ್ಯಾಬು ಅವ್ರದೇ ಇದೆ. ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಬಯೋಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಓದಿದೆ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ. ಅದರಲ್ಲೇ ಅವರು ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಹೇಳ್ತೇನೆ ಜನತಾ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ನನಗೆ ಅಮೆರಿಕಾ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಗೊತ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಾನು ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಹೇಳ್ತೇನೆ ಮೋಹನ್ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಏನು ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ರಿಲೇಟಿವ್ ಕಾಂಪಿಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ. ಅವ್ರು ಒಂದೇ ಒಂದು ಹೇಳೋದು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ 90% ಅಮೆರಿಕನ್ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ಸ್ಗೆ ನಾವು ಬೆಟರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಬಟ್ ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ 2-3% ಬಂದಾಗ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಡಿಫಿಕಲ್ಟ್ ಟು ಕಂಪೀಟ್ ವಿತ್ ದೆಮ್. ಎಷ್ಟು ಆನೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿರ್ತಂತೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅವ್ರ ಬಿಡುವೆ ಅಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಮಾಡಿ 1 ತಿಂಗಳು ಸಿಕ್ಕಲ್ಲ ನಿಮಗೆ ಬಿಡುವೆ ಇರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ನನಗೆ ಕೂತಿಂದ ಕೇಳಿ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ ಸರ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಈ ಸ್ಪೀಕಿಂಗ್ ಟುಮಾರೋ ಆನ್ ಮೌತ್. ಮೌದೇ ಬಹಳ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಆನ್ ಆಲ್ ಆಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್. ಐದರ್ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ಲಿ ಡಿಸೀಸ್ ಆಗ್ಬೇಕಾಗ್ತದೆ. ಮೌತ್ gateway for health and disease. Such an important topic is there. Then on Sunday is a film show. Dr. Meera Chandrasekhar, curator and teaching professor of physics and astronomy, University of Missouri, Columbia, U.S.A. She is going to speak on semiconductors and superconductors under higher pressure. And on that day being a Sunday, we are offering you a cup of tea also to attend the lecture. Is ಹೇಳಿ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ದಿನ such a beautiful talk, such a nice person from the point of National College. I thank Dr. Sitharama Iyengar immensely on your behalf and behalf of the institution. Of course, we should be very, very grateful to all those persons responsible for instituting the G.T. Narayan Memorial Lecture. Ella Putra relatives, Professor Mahabala, Mrs. G.T. Narayan. Of course, Sridhar with the case of the day. Case is well-known person. All this stuff. ಕೊನೆಗೆ ನಿಮಿಷದ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ ಕಲ್ತಿನ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಕೆಲವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಅಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಾಗಿ. ಬಟ್ ಈವನ್ ದೆನ್ ವಿ ಶುಡ್ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಫುಲ್ ಟು ಆಲ್ ಆಫ್ ದೆಮ್ ಫಾರ್ ಹಿಯರ್. ಅಂಡ್ ನೋ ಸೈನ್ಸ್ ಲೆಕ್ಚರ್ಸ್ ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟೆಡ್ ಅನ್ಲೆಸ್ 1 or 2 ಕ್ವಶನ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಪುಟ್. ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಕಷ್ಟ, ಬಟ್ ಒಂದು ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಾಗಿ. ಬೇಕಾದ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ವಿಲ್ ಅಲಾಟ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ 15 minutes ಫಾರ್ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಆನ್ಸರ್. ನೌ ಐ ರಿಕ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಯು ಟು ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಕ್ವಶನಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದೀಸ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್. ಅವ್ರು ಆಗಲೇ ಕೈ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ ಅವಾಗ.
So, hackers, from where they have come, or where they get the tuition. So they are must be smarter than the programmers. So where they get the tuition? One question. The second okay. The second question is about our ATM cards. We have 4-digit PIN code numbers. Is there any possibility that other people can take our money without my knowledge? These are the 2 questions.
Impossible. Okay, first let me answer your first question. You know, the hackers are very, very bright people. And for example, at Cornell University, I happened to visit, almost this was about 10 years back. And I wanted to visit Professor John Hopcraft, who is a very well-known distinguished professor. And then, so when I was meeting all the students, there was one student with very long hair, who was sitting at the back. He asked me a very important question. Of course, that talk was a lot more technical. So he said, I know how to break your password account. So then I told him, okay, show me how to do it. So then, normally he's very bright. So all of these hackers are very smart. They are not only smart, they know how to program really very well. They have understood the system. So then he said, I know your password. So then I was a little bit, I said, well, I don't want to have a discussion with you right in the public about my password, but I would like to talk to you after my talk. So when he met me, so then I asked him, before I tell, you can tell my password right or wrong, tell me, how do you do it? So he said, well, I'll have an algorithm to do it. So normally passwords, you know how it goes. You know, like for example, you go by last name, Iyengar, you know. So you take one or two characters from there, IY. Then normally what we do is, we'll add our wife's spouse's name, and then you will put some numbers in between, 1, 2. So he had a program which can sort of calibrate all these potential combinations of these characters. And then he also knows my complete personality, who I am, what I am trying to do, you know, and things like that. So 99% of the time, they do have a very sophisticated program which can at least match your 3/4 of your password. Not all the time, because see, normally now, how do you prevent it? We always ask, just don't give numbers. Or you know, sometimes you will know your son's name, you will take a few characters, or daughter's name, or you know, somewhere you come from. Then some people, you know, people who come from India, they always had, you know, some names related to Bhagavad Gita. So he knows all of these because he does have a database, and depending on the personality of the people, so he will be able to guess it. So that is possible, but he has to work hard for that. It is not that easy. I mean, you know, you can't just do it in 1 or 2 hours. But apparently he did not guess my password properly. But he did guess part of it right. Because I used a different combination of my house name here and there, so many things. So he went on trying, but he could get partial substring of the last 5, 6 digits. So it is possible to break given some time. So that's why in many of the, you know, important places like Homeland Security, they change your name, your password every day. So whatever the password you have today is not the same one like what you have the next day. So these things keep changing. Okay, the ATM card is also something very similar, because when you take the ATM card, so there are different ways one can guess it, you know. Again, the same way, you know, you have to use your PIN code. So I've always seen people use PIN code from numbers 1 to 10. So he can do some sort of, whether an odd or an integer, you know, either 1, 2, 3, 4, or 2, 3, 4, or square of it, or using some continued fraction method, he can certainly guess. I mean, you know, what it is. And sometimes what they do is, when you sort of insert your ATM card, it also puts a, you know, a print of your card in the machine. So there are a lot of information he can collect, and he can certainly break the card. So some of it is not very easy, but all of these things are doable. So because these hackers, you know, especially from China and Korea, they're very, very smart. I mean, they really know that. I mean, they don't do it offhand. They take 6 months to 8 months to break the system. Yes.
I'll tell you. What that? Chinese hackers are state players, government players.
Repeat that.
The Chinese hackers are basically. Chinese hackers are basically rogue elements, are the state actors.
You know, I think it's hard to say that, but you know, one thing which I have seen, you know, I had 60 PhD students graduated under me in the last 40 years. But I had a lot of good Chinese students, very good in mathematics. I mean, you know, a lot of Indian students, but Chinese and Koreans, they're by far the best good mathematically trained from the very beginning. So this hacking also needs a lot of good combinatorics idea in your brain. I mean, you have to think at a different level and use these things. So by and large, they are about the best in terms of dealing with you know, this kind of problem and how they can enter into the system. They are good. Most of them are good. But again, as I said, these things don't happen immediately. It takes certain time, you know. See, they really plan. First, they understand your system, what you are using. You know, what kind of computing over there you are using, IBM equipment, DEC equipment. Then they will study. They will also watch your password, what you are trying to communicate. Then they will also get information from you. You know, they will ask you some questions, how you respond to it. So they will collect a lot of information, and then only they will be able to develop a good algorithmic structure to break the system. Yes.
Namaste, sir. Bangalore, sir. I'm part of cybersecurity incident response team with IBM. I'm just looking at one slide which you just showed us. There are not many threads, and there are few professionals. So probably just one looking out for a suggestion. Professionals anta ಹೇಳಿದಾಗ, so probably when we look out for some professional training or certification for these security related things from reputed universities like GIAC, so it is quite not affordable, like it runs to thousands of dollars. So at this point in time, can just throw some light on how do we address this gap in developing professionals, or do we have to deal with it? Do we have any solution on that?
No, yeah, okay. So as I said, none of these things are very difficult because we need to sort of first understand the kind of attacks that one can do, and then we need to be able to start teaching the students how we can minimize it, how we can prevent it. So it is not completely difficult, but that's why all the universities are now starting a program called Master's Program in Cybersecurity, where they talk about security, how to prevent it, how to detect it. So you'll be writing a lot of large-scale software, and then they also develop fault-tolerant software, what is program. So there is a lot of things are already going on. But in spite of that, this information war is going on because once they know some information about you or an individual or about an organization or an enterprise, if they think there is profitable to hack the system, yes. But there are a lot of now nice cyber softwares have come, but again, there are new techniques of hacking is coming, but it is a science. I mean, it goes both ways. So that's why what I was start of advocating is to have this kind of a program right in the universities, because that's where a lot of bright people are there, and definitely they can make some difference on that.
You probably were just mentioning that from a U.S. context, right? So probably that can also happen in Indian context?
Of course it will happen. I think IIT Kanpur, they are a very strong group. I think IIT Bombay also, I know that. I'm not sure if it is to science. So in a lot of places people are working, and even, I saw even actually regional engineering colleges, I'm reviewing some of their theses. Some of them are very good, especially in security. So people are really working on many of these aspects.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, one of the largest perhaps database systems is our Aadhaar card.
Correct.
There is a lot of reservation about the security of this, especially on in the media. It is so much has taken place. Any particular emphasis from present day cybersecurity to make it really proof?
Of course, I don't know much about it. Aadhaar I've heard, I think Nandan Meekin is the one who sort of spearheaded this effort, right? Yeah. I think it is certainly a very good system. And I think, I don't know the details, but I've also heard there are some security concerns on that. But I think they've been able to circumvent many of those problems. It is like social security numbers. I mean, people can always guess your numbers based on few digits also. But I think, although I think the present government is also trying to use it right now, because for some time I was under the impression that it may be a political football, that one government may not like the other one, but this is a good system, as what I have seen and heard from people who played some significant role in developing the Aadhaar system. But any big system like that, they're always prone to cyber attacks. But I have not seen actually any negative thing about it, but I think they've been able to use it successfully so far at this point. Of course, there may be some attacks. I think if it falls into the hands of Chinese or Koreans, they can always come up with a mechanism to see how they can break the system. Yeah.
I think we'll allow a lady to ask a question. I was reading a book called Famans Enigma written by Simon Singh. The role of prime numbers in coding. So has the abstractness and ambiguity regarding computing prime numbers has a major role in encryption of data and securing the protocols. Can you throw some light on that?
So, yeah, prime numbers have been used for developing a good crypto systems. You know, of course, there is a very famous system called RSA system. I don't know how many of you are very familiar with that. That system is being used all over the world, and it was developed partially at MIT and it is there in Southern California. Now, that system uses prime numbers, but the prime numbers are another good example that we can use for deciphering information in the context of crypto systems. So people are using it, but again, the number of prime, the total number of prime numbers that you can also is sort of very limited, because one of the things that we need to worry about is how computationally intensive first, and at the same time, it should be not be too expensive also. So yes, prime numbers have been used very extensively for many of the crypto systems in practice. Yes.
The Professor Venugopal will definitely output. And that will be the last question technically. Then I will close this session. But Dr. Iyengar is available. You can start talking to him as long as it goes over there. No problem. That is the last question.
Thank you very much, sir. I just wanted to know about one thing about the WikiLeaks, which is the second thing. And the second thing is about why not all the world can make it a crime, and for some reason it is being declared as a crime. So any action taken in U.S. or other? Thank you.
Yeah, okay, first let me answer the second question. I think now there is an international organization for minimizing the cyber threats, and of course, as usual, China and Korea, they are not playing a role in that. But I think there is the European, all the countries in Europe, they have their own committees, they have their own conferences to bring people to give talks on cybersecurity. So that there's, and then there's the United States also is coming out. Now, WikiLeaks is a little bit unfortunate because, he had all the information basically, and then I don't know for what reason he did it. I think, I don't know, it serves some good, some bad, and any country like United States, India, places, there's always a certain amount of things that we do secretly. Like for example, in the United States, I think if they can sort of understand that this person is a terrorist based on the profile, they'll always be constantly watching what he does. And I think that's quite natural because they want to minimize the terrorism and all. But exposing it on the WikiLeaks has caused a lot of anxiety. And so that means, anybody who's working in the classified information part of the program can always leak. So WikiLeaks, I personally did not like it. But there were some good things came out because, especially for politicians, there was a real major emphasis to say that this person is good or that person is bad. But I think there is always a good intention from anybody, at least in the United States, to say something good should be done to minimize all of these terrorists. So WikiLeaks, I personally don't much care because it has leaked a lot of good information because Russians pretty much know what the United States does. So that has become a very weak point to sort of implement your cyber-related security threats to all the countries. That's the problem.
I will close this session. Thank you, Dr. Iyengar. Thank you all.